I sat down over the last couple of weeks and thought about doing some kind of video on the best games I played through 2019, but I realised that most of those games people probably already know about. Besides, it's more enjoyable making fun of something than praising it, and people seem to kind of like those videos more anyway. So what I thought I'd do instead is take a look at the worst games I played in 2019, 6 of them to be precise. What makes this all the more convenient too is that all of these games happen to be made by the same developer, Konnichiwa Games. If you never heard of these guys, well, you might have at least heard of some of the games. They're one of those developers on Steam throwing the word hentai in front of the title of what's basically just an asset flip, then slapping a low price tag on it and selling it on the merit of it being ironically bad. But an ironically bad game is still bad. I've actually been meaning to take a look at these for a while now, and seeing as it finally seems they don't have any more upcoming releases planned, it might be the best time to do it. I also realised the dilemma that talking about these games may do more harm than good, directing more attention to these things than they deserve. But part of my New Year's resolution is to stop playing so many crappy games. But like that drug addict doing that one last rack before going into rehab, I feel like I have to get this all out of my system. Right, so the first game these guys made is called Hentai Hell. This is one where I guess you're trapped in hell, taking on the exact same looking demon girls over and over. And look, right off the bat, even the main menu has a glitch. Like, what a perfect sign of things to come. Anyway, this all kind of plays out like Quake 3 Arena. You're just moving around this very small map with an annoyingly slow movement speed and a shotgun, killing the same 3 enemies that just keep spawning in. There doesn't appear to be any point to any of this. As far as I can tell, it never ends, and once you get the achievement for lasting a certain amount of time and the required amount of kills, you've basically seen and done all there is to do. Now, this is lazy for a whole lot of reasons, but what annoys me the most is that the demons can shoot through the floor to hit you. I guess this was done so you can't just hide on the upper platforms and run the timer out, but it's still just so lazy. Also, because your movement speed is so slow, it's impossible to properly dodge projectiles either, so you get hit by these things all the time. The next game they brought out after this, not even a month later, is Hentai World War II. This one though is a third-person shooter set during World War II where you're playing as another generic-looking anime girl running around shooting German soldiers. You see this main menu and that city in the background? Yeah, because what you're looking at is the entire map for the game. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. It's just one city block repeated over and over. You know what disturbs me the most about this game though? Is that it has a very positive rating on Steam, further proof that the Steam reviews are often about as dependable as an alcoholic guarding a beer keg. This time though you can at least customize your character, but this only seems to control the amount of clothing she wears. When the game starts, you're then just moving down these very generic and barren looking streets, taking on a never-ending series of soldiers who just keep spawning in ahead of you. You got a few weapons here, but they're all terrible. The only half decent one is the Thompson submachine gun because at least it has a fast firing rate. You can also throw grenades, but you may as well be throwing fart bombs because they seem to do about the same amount of damage. What really annoys me the most though is how the Germans just hang back the entire time. They just stand in the middle of the street, so you have to push your way forward to reach them, usually getting mowed down in the process. Oh man, the music in this one too, it's like someone just typed generic war music into Google and downloaded whatever public domain track they could find. It sucks. There's 2 DLCs for this one. Yeah, it comes with DLC. The first one where you have to defeat Hitler, who's the size of a house for some reason. And the second DLC is Nazi zombies. Yeah, Nazi zombies, because, I don't know, memes. This zombie DLC thing though is one of the worst things I've ever played. I mean, it's so bad that they should be paying us to play it. And every zombie takes like a bazillion hits before dying. This actually brings up another point too, which is just how long it takes to kill everything in this game. It's not enough that the shooting feels like you're trying to slap your own ass with a wet towel, but on top of that, everyone is super spongy. On the subject of zombies, the next one they brought out was Hentai Horror, the 8 Pictures, and it should be pretty obvious what this is based off. Yeah, it's a pretty crappy ripoff of Slender, and that's not a good sign. A ripoff of an already terrible game is bound to be bad. If you've ever played Slender, it's pretty much exactly the same. You're just moving around a forest at nighttime with nothing but a flashlight, trying to find 8 randomly placed pages before a monster finds you. In this case, it's the hentai monster, and the pages you're looking for are images of naked girls, or girls wrapped up in a towel if you've not got the DLC turned on. Oh yeah, and don't ever press escape when you're playing this because there's no pause button. It just throws you back to the main menu. Yeah, found that out the hard way. The problem with this game, aside from the obvious, is that the map is just too big. I walked around for like 10 or so minutes trying to find a single page and I couldn't even find one. When the monster finally turned up to kill me, it was more like an act of mercy than anything else. Yeah, also, despite the game saying not to sprint, it doesn't seem to do jack shit. And you can easily outrun the monster regardless, you pretty much have to want to die here. After dying for the first time, I then went on Steam and used the only available guide for this I could find. And I was able to find 7 out of the 8 pages, but for some reason I couldn't find the 8th page to save my life. I'm really embarrassed to say I spent almost an hour with this thing before I gave up. Think of all I could have accomplished within an hour if I put my mind to something more worthwhile. Nah, who am I kidding? Next up is Hentai Sniper Middle East, and this is the worst one yet. This is just you on top of a building shooting anime girls clad in burqas and bikinis from 100 meters away, who are either completely unaware of your presence or too stupid to realize they're getting shot at. Now, there's actual bullet ballistics in this one, like you get bullet drop over long distances and the bullet even curves from the wind. But how you're supposed to know what these are at any given moment, I've got no idea because it never tells you. There's a slow motion effect when you make a direct hit, showing the bullet whizzing in to hit someone, kinda like in the Sniper Elite series. But half the time it glitches out and just zooms in on the background. Yeah, and I love these houses, they're just these indiscriminate cubes. This is also the most pointless game so far because there's no threat to the player. You just sit here shooting at these girls without any retaliation, it's completely pointless. At least the Hentai Monster one had some kind of point to it, but here you're just standing on a rooftop. Check this out too, there's even a leaderboard where some guy named Marvin almost got a score of 2 million. What do you reckon the chances are he did it all legitimately? Imagine ever being on the top of a leaderboard for a game like Hentai Sniper Middle East. I mean, makes me sick thinking about it. Makes me sick! Anyway, we're in the endgame now, and the next one is called Hentai Redemption. No points for figuring out what they're trying to cash in on with this one. This one has the biggest file size out of the entire list, using up a whopping 3 gigabytes of hard drive space. You'd think that means it might actually be a good game with some actual content, and you know what? Nah, it's still terrible. Check out the main menu again. Not only does the horse's hair clip through its own neck, but the girl's revolver clips through the horse as well. I mean, how can something so simple go overlooked? This, I think, is the worst game in the entire list. It's such an insult to everyone who ever tried their hand at game developing that this thing exists. The fact that Steam allowed this to be sold in the first place shows just how much of a joke their quality control is. So it's basically just a rehash of Hentai World War II, but now you're in the Wild West instead of some generic looking German town. The problem is you've not got any automatic weapons, only a revolver, a double-barreled shotgun and a rifle, all of which take a dog's age to reload. Enemies all have 6-shot revolvers though, which means a single enemy can gun you down before he even has to reload. Your character still has a bikini on, but now she's got a cowboy hat as well. Probably one just taken right out of some kind of Unity engine asset library. At one point I got stuck in the saloon because I could get in but not out for some reason. And again, like the World War II game, the enemies are so spongy. Your health again regenerates so slowly, I honestly think a wound would heal faster in real life than it does here. They didn't even bother changing the grenade either, it's still the same grenade from the other game. You think maybe it might be changed to like dynamite or something? I mean, that would at least make sense. But no, it's just the same asset. In a game with floating crates though, I don't know why that surprises me. All I can think of to say here that isn't negative is that it does at least look better than the other games, but that's like saying that a turd looks better when you've eaten vegetables than it does after you've eaten a burrito. Finally, we come to the last game, Hentai Sheriff, because one crappy western wasn't enough. And again, they fucked up as soon as the main menu. I mean, these girls are holding what looks like Berettas. Berettas in the Wild West. You know what, I don't even care anymore at this point, let's just get it over with. Alright, so this one is an on-rail shooter, and it reminds me a little bit of Lethal Enforcers 2, except way worse. You just have to shoot all these static images before they shoot you. You only shoot the ones with the guns though, not the other girls, or you lose a life. I mean, it's a classic formula. Does that gunshot sound familiar though? It ought to, it's the same sound effect as the Glock from Half-Life. The problem with this game though is that reloading takes a few seconds and you can't interrupt the reloading timer to fire again. So if an enemy pops up when you're reloading, you take a hit because you're pretty much defenseless. You'd think it might be quicker if you're only reloading a couple of rounds, but no, you empty the entire chamber and reload 6 entirely new shots. It'd probably be fine though if the animation just didn't take so long. So I guess the only way to get through this is to memorize the pattern of enemies so you know the exact times you're safe to reload. Except, how about no, because the pattern of these things is fucking randomized. How could they screw up something as simple as reloading so much? What did I say before? How Hentai Redemption was the worst game in this entire list? No, I take it back. This is the worst game in the entire list because it completely ignores the basic principles of sensible game design. It's like something designed by an alien who thinks this is what games should be like. And why is the whole thing letterboxed? Did they do this on purpose or just mess up the visual settings? What you're looking at here is the furthest I managed to get, and if you're someone who managed to beat this thing, well, let me tell you that's something you probably shouldn't be sharing with people. Look, I guess the one good takeaway from all of these games is that they are super short. The longest I spent with any of these was about an hour with the 8 pitches. Everything else I spent no longer than 15 or 20 minutes. So even though playing through all of these was soul crushing, my soul really only got crushed over the better part of a couple of hours. They are also really cheap too. During the Steam sales you can pick most of these up for less than $1, so that is worth noting. Now look, I'm not some kind of snowflake that's got an aversion to adult content in gaming. I think I've even mellowed out a bit throughout the years, and I don't dislike these games on the basis of them including nudity. I dislike them on the basis of them being terrible. If the gameplay itself is enjoyable and entertaining, I don't really give two shits about the morality of the content, I mean, within reason anyway. These are just bad games on a basic level, and the anime boobs are just window dressing compared to how horrible everything else is. What's even weirder is that there's just a bunch of these kind of games on Steam which all use the same anime character models. Like this one on the main menu for Hentai Battle Royale even has the same iris as the others. My guess is that it's some kind of generic model from some kind of asset library, and all these guys are drinking the same Kool-Aid. The Area 51 game uses the same weapons and animations from Hentai World War II. This one too, called Hentai Nazi, where you again have to kill Hitler, also uses the same character model for Hitler. Still, Konnichiwa Games are at the forefront of this because they've made the most in such a short amount of time, and I wager that most people would just be refunding them anyway. I know I did. Maybe Konnichiwa Games should change their name to Sayonara Games and just piss right off.